In the heart of Chicago, where skyscrapers kissed the clouds and streets buzzed with life, lived a 17-year-old girl named Maya Johnson. She wasn't your typical teenager. While other kids her age were busy scrolling through social media or hanging out at coffee shops, Maya spent most of her time buried in thick law books. Her dream? To become one of the greatest attorneys the world had ever seen. But there was something no one outside her family knew. Maya had already passed the bar exam. At just 16 years old, she graduated from an online law school program, a feat that would leave even seasoned adults speechless. Maya came from a household steeped in activism. Her parents, both passionate advocates for justice, had taught her early on about fairness, equality, and standing up for what's right. They often shared stories of how they fought against discrimination and unfair treatment in their community. Inspired by their courage, Maya decided to take a different path to make a difference, through the legal system. However, she preferred staying under the radar, quietly learning and preparing herself for the day she could step into courtrooms and fight for those who couldn't fight for themselves. One sunny afternoon, everything changed unexpectedly. Maya's younger brother, Marcus, found himself in trouble after being pulled over for riding his bike on the wrong side of the road. It seemed like a minor issue, but when they arrived at the courthouse, things took a turn. Their assigned public defender failed to show up due to car trouble, leaving them stranded. Panic started to creep in as Marcus whispered, "What are we going to do now?" That's when Maya made a bold decision. She glanced around the room, noticing how chaotic and disorganized it felt. No one was paying attention to them anyway, so why not try? Reaching into her bag, she pulled out a pair of oversized glasses and tied her curly hair into a tight bun, transforming herself into someone older and more serious looking. With trembling hands but a determined heart, she approached the clerk and introduced herself as Ms. Johnson, representing my client today. The courtroom was packed with people waiting for their cases to be heard. When Maya stepped forward, some eyebrows went up, but no one stopped her. After all, she looked professional enough, at least from afar. As she sat down beside Marcus, flipping through notes she'd scribbled earlier, she reminded herself to stay calm. Little did she know, this moment would change not only her life, but also challenge the biases of those around her. As the judge entered the room, everyone stood up respectfully. Judge Richard Hawthorne was infamous for his sharp tongue and lack of patience. He hated delays, incompetence, or anything that wasted his precious time. When he finally called Maya's case, his eyes landed on her. For a brief second, confusion flickered across his face before turning into amusement. A teenage girl pretending to be a lawyer. This was going to be entertaining. As Judge Richard Hawthorne settled into his chair, he leaned forward, his expression a mix of curiosity and disbelief. He scanned the courtroom, his eyes landing on the young girl seated at the defense table. Maya sat upright, her oversized glasses perched on her nose, clutching a notepad filled with handwritten notes. To anyone watching, she looked like a nervous intern, or perhaps someone who had wandered into the wrong room by mistake. Judge Hawthorne raised an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed. "Is this some kind of joke?" he asked dryly, his voice echoing through the courtroom. "Who exactly is representing the defendant here?" Maya stood up slowly, her heart pounding but her face calm. She cleared her throat and said in a steady voice, "Your Honor, I am Ms. Johnson, counsel for the defendant." Her words were polite yet firm, betraying no hint of hesitation. The judge chuckled, leaning back in his chair as if amused by a clever punchline. "Ms. Johnson, is it?" he repeated, his tone dripping with sarcasm. "Well, aren't you ambitious? What's next? A toddler prosecuting felony cases?" A few people in the gallery snickered nervously, unsure whether to laugh or stay silent. Maya ignored them, keeping her focus on the judge. She knew that reacting emotionally would only play into his hands. Instead, she took a deep breath and began outlining her argument. "Your Honor," she said, "my client was cited for riding his bicycle on the wrong side of the road. However, upon reviewing the circumstances, It's clear that the officer failed to follow proper protocol during the stop. Judge Hawthorne interrupted her almost immediately. Protocol? Really? He scoffed, folding his arms across his chest. Let me guess, you learned about protocol from a high school civics class. His dismissive tone sent a ripple of discomfort through the room. Even the bailiff shifted awkwardly, sensing the tension building between the bench and the defense table. But Maya didn't flinch. She adjusted her glasses and continued undeterred. Actually, Your Honor, she replied, her voice steady. Illinois Vehicle Code Section 111502 outlines specific guidelines for issuing citations. If those procedures weren't followed, the citation may not hold up under scrutiny. For a moment, the judge seemed taken aback. He hadn't expected the teenager to cite actual legal statutes. Still, he wasn't ready to let her off the hook so easily. Oh well, isn't that impressive? He sneered, leaning forward again. Tell me, Ms. Johnson, how many years of experience do you have practicing law? Or should I ask, how many months? The comment drew more stifled laughter from the crowd, but Maya remained unfazed. She opened her notebook and turned to a fresh page, pretending to jot something down. In truth, she was buying herself a few seconds to compose her thoughts. When she spoke again, her voice carried a quiet confidence that silenced the murmurs in the room. Experience isn't measured solely by age, Your Honor, she said softly but firmly. It's measured by preparation, knowledge, and dedication to justice. And if you'll allow me to proceed, I believe I can demonstrate that my client deserves a fair hearing. Her response caught the judge off guard. For a split second, his smirk faltered, replaced by a flicker of intrigue, or perhaps annoyance. He waved a hand dismissively, as though granting permission simply to get this bizarre spectacle over with. Fine, Ms. Johnson, he said, his tone laced with mockery. Go ahead. Let's see what you've got. But don't blame me if your little experiment blows up in your face. Maya nodded respectfully and returned to her seat. As she flipped through her notes, she felt a surge of determination coursing through her veins. This wasn't just about defending her brother anymore. It was about proving that intelligence and capability transcended age, appearance, and preconceived notions. The courtroom fell silent, all eyes fixed on the young woman at the defense table. No one dared to whisper now. They were too curious to see what would happen next. And so, with every ounce of courage she possessed, Maya began dismantling the prosecution's case piece by piece, her sharp mind cutting through the fog of bias and disbelief that hung thick in the air. Maya's voice rang out clearly in the courtroom, each word precise and deliberate. She began by addressing the officer who had issued the citation to her brother, Marcus. The officer, a middle-aged man with a no-nonsense demeanor, sat upright on the witness stand, his arms crossed as if daring this teenager to challenge him. But Maya wasn't intimidated. With calm confidence, she started asking questions. Officer Reynolds, she began, glancing at her notes before looking up at him. Can you confirm whether you informed my client of the specific violation he was accused of committing during your interaction? The officer hesitated for a fraction of a second, but quickly recovered. Yes, ma'am. I mean, miss, I told him exactly why I stopped him. Maya tilted her head slightly, her expression thoughtful. Interesting, she said softly, almost to herself. Then, turning back to the officer, she asked, and did you provide him with a written warning or explanation about the rules regarding bicycle traffic at that time? This time, the officer shifted uncomfortably in his seat. He glanced toward the prosecutor, seeking some kind of guidance, but received none. I don't recall doing that, he admitted reluctantly. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Even Judge Hawthorne leaned forward slightly, his earlier smirk replaced by a look of mild interest. Maya seized the moment, pressing further. So, Officer Reynolds, you didn't follow the standard procedure of providing clear instructions to my client before issuing the citation, correct? The officer squirmed under her steady gaze. Well, I might not have given him a detailed explanation, but it's common sense to ride on the right side of the road. Maya nodded slowly, as though considering his response. Then, without missing a beat, she turned to face the judge. "Your Honor," she said, her tone respectful yet firm, "Illinois law requires officers to ensure individuals understand the nature of their alleged violations before citations are issued. Without proper communication, the citation becomes invalid." The prosecutor, a seasoned attorney named Mr. Grayson, finally stirred in his seat. Up until now, he'd been watching the exchange with growing unease, unsure how to handle this unexpected turn of events. Clearing his throat, he stood up and addressed the judge. "Your Honor, while Ms. Johnson raises an interesting point, we must remember that the defendant was indeed riding against traffic. That fact alone is sufficient grounds for the citation." But Maya wasn't done. She turned her attention to Mr. Grayson, her eyes locking onto his with quiet intensity. "With all due respect, Counselor," she said, "the law isn't just about outcomes. It's about process. If the process is flawed, then the outcome cannot stand. Would you agree?" Mr. Grayson blinked, caught off guard by her poise and logic. For a moment, he fumbled for words, glancing briefly at the judge as if hoping for support. Instead, he found Judge Hawthorne staring intently at Maya, his earlier amusement replaced by something closer to disbelief, or perhaps respect. As the hearing continued, Maya's arguments grew sharper and more compelling. She cited case after case, drawing parallels between past rulings and the current situation. Each point she made landed like a well-aimed arrow, hitting its mark with precision. Spectators in the gallery exchanged wide-eyed glances, whispering among themselves. Some scribbled notes furiously, while others simply stared in awe at the young woman commanding the room. Even the bailiff, a grizzled man who had seen countless trials over the years, couldn't hide his fascination. Leaning casually against the wall, he muttered under his breath, "Never thought I'd see the day a kid would school these folks." Judge Hawthorne, meanwhile, struggled to maintain his composure. His initial mockery had faded, replaced by a simmering frustration. Every attempt he made to interrupt or undermine Maya only seemed to strengthen her resolve. When he interjected with another sarcastic remark, "Aren't you planning to cite Webster's dictionary next?" she responded with a polite smile and a crisp legal reference that left him momentarily speechless. By the time Maya concluded her questioning of the officer, the atmosphere in the courtroom had shifted entirely. What had begun as a routine hearing had transformed into something extraordinary, a battle of wits where age and experience were rendered irrelevant. As she returned to her seat beside Marcus, she allowed herself a small, private smile. She knew she had planted seeds of doubt in the minds of everyone present, including the judge. The prosecution's case, once solid and unshakable, as the courtroom buzzed with whispered conversations and growing curiosity, Maya could feel the weight of everyone's eyes on her. She had dismantled the prosecution's case piece by piece, exposing inconsistencies and highlighting procedural errors that even seasoned attorneys might have missed. But she knew the time had come to reveal the truth, not just about the citation against her brother, but also about herself. Standing up once more, Maya took a deep breath and adjusted her glasses, which had slipped slightly down her nose. Her hands trembled ever so faintly, but her voice remained steady as she addressed Judge Hawthorne directly. "Your Honor," she began, her tone respectful yet commanding, "before we proceed further, I believe there is an important clarification that needs to be made." The judge raised an eyebrow, his earlier smugness replaced by cautious curiosity. "Clarification," he repeated, leaning forward slightly. "What kind of clarification are you referring to, Ms. Johnson?" Maya paused for dramatic effect, letting the anticipation build in the room. Then, with deliberate calmness, she removed her glasses and tucked them into her pocket. She smoothed her hair back, revealing her youthful face fully for the first time since the hearing began. The transformation was subtle but powerful, a shift from the unassuming Ms. Johnson to someone far more remarkable. "Your Honor," she continued, meeting his gaze head-on, "my name is Maya Johnson, Esquire, I am a licensed attorney admitted to practice law in the state of Illinois. As soon as the words left her mouth, the courtroom erupted into gasps and murmurs. Reporters scrambled for their notebooks. Cameras clicked furiously, and spectators exchanged astonished looks. Even the bailiff let out a low whistle under his breath. Judge Hawthorne froze, his face turning a deep shade of red. For a moment, it seemed as though he'd forgotten how to speak. His jaw hung open, and his eyes darted between Maya and the clerk, who quickly confirmed her credentials through official records. It was undeniable. This teenager standing before him wasn't some amateur playing dress-up. She was the real deal. Finally finding his voice, Judge Hawthorne stammered, "Why, you're actually a lawyer." His usual bravado was gone, replaced by a mixture of shock and embarrassment. He glanced around the room, clearly aware that every eye, including those of the media, was now trained on him. Maya nodded, her expression calm but resolute. "Yes, Your Honor. And while my age may surprise some people, I assure you that my qualifications and dedication to justice are no less valid than anyone else's in this room." Her words hung in the air, cutting through the tension like a knife. The prosecutor, Mr. Grayson, sank into his chair, visibly deflated. He ran a hand over his face, muttering something under his breath that sounded suspiciously like, "This can't be happening." Meanwhile, Judge Hawthorne struggled to regain control of the situation. Clearing his throat multiple times, he attempted an apology, though it came out awkward and forced. "Well, Ms. Johnson. Attorney Johnson. It appears I may have underestimated your capabilities earlier. Please accept my sincerest apologies." Maya didn't gloat or rub his mistake in his face. Instead, she offered a small, polite smile. "Thank you, Your Honor. However, this isn't about me. It's about ensuring fairness and due process for all individuals, regardless of appearances or assumptions." Her statement struck a chord, not just with the judge but with everyone present. Spectators nodded approvingly, and even the officer on the stand looked momentarily reflective. The atmosphere in the courtroom shifted yet again, not to one of mockery or disbelief, but to one of awe and respect. As the reality of the situation settled in, reporters began firing off questions from the gallery. "How old are you?" one shouted. Another called out, "Did you really graduate law school at 16? The noise grew louder until Judge Hawthorne banged his gavel repeatedly, calling for order. When silence finally returned, Maya stepped forward one last time. "Your Honor," she said, "I'd like to conclude my argument by emphasizing that justice should never depend on age, race, or background. My client deserves a fair ruling based on facts and proper procedure, not bias or oversight." With those final words, she sat down beside Marcus, who grinned proudly at his sister. The entire courtroom seemed to hold its breath, waiting for the judge's decision. Whatever happened next, one thing was certain: Maya Johnson had just made history and proven that brilliance knows no boundaries. The courtroom was eerily silent as Judge Hawthorne stared down at the young woman seated calmly at the defense table. For a man known for his sharp tongue and unshakable confidence, this moment was deeply humbling. His earlier mockery of Maya now hung over him like a heavy cloud, and he knew it wasn't just her watching. It was the entire room, the reporters scribbling furiously, and the cameras capturing every second of his discomfort. Clearing his throat again, Judge Hawthorne shifted uncomfortably in his chair. "Ms. Attorney Johnson," he corrected himself, emphasizing the title with an air of forced respect. "I must say, you've certainly made an impression here today." He glanced briefly at the prosecutor, who avoided eye contact altogether, then back at Maya. "Your arguments have been thorough. Very thorough." Maya nodded politely, but said nothing, allowing the judge to continue. She could see the gears turning in his head as he wrestled with how to salvage both the case and his dignity. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, he spoke again. "After reviewing the evidence and hearing your compelling points, I find that the story of Maya Johnson spread like wildfire, igniting conversations across the nation. Within days, her name was everywhere, on morning talk shows, late-night television, and even international news platforms. Her photograph, now iconic with her oversized glasses slightly askew and a determined glint in her eyes, appeared on magazine covers and social media feeds. The phrase "teen attorney takes down judge" became a rallying cry for young people everywhere who dared to dream beyond societal limits. Talk show hosts clamored to book her, eager to have the teenage legal prodigy grace their sets. One host gushed, "Maya, you're an inspiration to us all. How does it feel to be a national sensation?" Maya smiled warmly but kept her response grounded. "I'm grateful for the attention, but my focus isn't on fame," she replied. "It's about using this platform to advocate for those who need help navigating the justice system." Her humility only added to her charm, earning her even more admirers. Universities also joined the frenzy, offering honorary degrees and full scholarships to Maya, despite her already impressive academic achievements. Law firms from New York to Los Angeles extended lucrative job offers, hoping to add her brilliance to their teams. Some even joked that hiring her might guarantee victory in every case they took on. But Maya politely declined most of these opportunities. She wasn't interested in climbing corporate ladders or chasing wealth. Instead, she doubled down on her mission, helping underserved communities access quality legal representation. Her nonprofit organization, which she named Justice for All Youth, quickly gained traction. Donations poured in from supporters inspired by her story, enabling her to hire a team of passionate volunteers, including law students, retired attorneys, and activists. Together, they set up free clinics in low-income neighborhoods, offering workshops on legal rights, assistance with minor cases, and mentorship programs for aspiring lawyers. Word traveled fast, and soon families from all over the city were lining up outside their offices, seeking advice and support. Despite her growing influence, Maya remained approachable and relatable. At one clinic, she knelt beside a shy 12-year-old boy who had been suspended from school unfairly. "Don't worry," she told him gently. "We'll figure this out together." Her ability to connect with people, regardless of age or background, made her not just a lawyer but a beacon of hope. However, fame came with its own challenges. Critics began to emerge, casting doubt on her accomplishments. Some accused her of being a publicity stunt orchestrated by her parents, while others dismissed her as a novelty act bound to fade away once the spotlight dimmed. Online trolls attacked her relentlessly, questioning whether someone so young could truly understand the complexities of the law. But Maya refused to let negativity derail her. During an interview on a popular podcast, she addressed the criticism head-on. "People are always going to have opinions," she said calmly. "Some will cheer you on, and others will try to bring you down. What matters is staying true to your purpose. For me, that's fighting for fairness and equality in a system that often overlooks the voices of the vulnerable." Her resilience struck a chord with listeners, silencing many detractors and inspiring countless others. Schools invited her to speak at graduations and career days, where students eagerly asked how she managed to achieve so much at such a young age. "Hard work, patience, and believing in yourself," she would answer simply, leaving them with practical advice rather than empty platitudes. As weeks turned into months, Maya continued balancing her role as a practicing attorney with her advocacy work. Each day brought new challenges, but also new victories. Whether she was defending a single mother facing eviction or mentoring a teenager dreaming of becoming a lawyer, she approached every task with the same dedication and passion that had propelled her into the national spotlight. By the end of the year, Justice for All Youth had expanded to 3 additional cities, reaching hundreds of families and changing countless lives. Maya's journey proved that success wasn't measured by accolades or headlines. It was about making a tangible difference in the world. And as she stood before a packed auditorium one evening, delivering a speech to a room full of wide-eyed students, she reminded them of something she'd learned long ago. No matter where you come from or what obstacles stand in your way, You have the power to rewrite the rules. All it takes is courage and a little bit of faith in yourself. As Maya's star continued to rise, so did the challenges that came with her newfound fame. While many celebrated her achievements, there were others who seemed determined to tear her down. Critics took to social media and opinion columns, questioning whether her success was genuine or simply a product of her parents' connections. Some accused her of using her youth and race as tools for attention, dismissing her legal victories as anomalies rather than evidence of her skill. One particularly scathing article read, "Teen attorney or media sensation. The truth behind Maya Johnson's rise." The constant scrutiny weighed on her, though she rarely let it show in public. Late at night, when the world quieted and the hum of the city faded into silence, Maya would sit by her bedroom window, staring out at the stars. She often wondered if she had made the right choice, stepping into the spotlight. But then she'd remind herself of the family she'd helped, the single mother who kept her home, the teenager who avoided expulsion, the elderly man who finally received justice after years of neglect. Those moments mattered more than any cruel comment ever could. One day, while preparing for a new case, Maya received an unexpected email. It was from Judge Richard Hawthorne. At first, she hesitated to open it, unsure of what to expect. But curiosity got the better of her, and she clicked through to find a brief yet sincere message. "Ms. Johnson," it began, "I owe you an apology, not just for my behavior in court that day, but for the way I've treated countless individuals over the years. You've given me much to reflect on, and I'd like to ask if you'd be willing to mentor me on issues of biased and equitable treatment within the judicial system. Respectfully, Judge Hawthorne." Maya read the email twice, her heart softening despite the lingering sting of his earlier mockery. She knew how difficult it must have been for someone like Judge Hawthorne, a man accustomed to authority and control, to admit fault. After consulting with her parents and mentors, she decided to accept his request. "Everyone deserves a chance to grow," she told them. Even judges. Their first meeting took place in a small cafe near the courthouse. Judge Hawthorne arrived wearing civilian clothes instead of his usual robes, looking almost unrecognizable without the stern expression he typically carried in court. He greeted Maya awkwardly, extending a hand that trembled slightly. "Thank you for agreeing to meet with me," he said, his voice tinged with nervousness. They spent hours discussing systemic biases, implicit prejudices, and ways to create a fairer courtroom environment. Maya shared stories from her nonprofit work, highlighting the struggles faced by marginalized communities. Judge Hawthorne listened intently, occasionally jotting notes in a leather-bound journal. By the end of their conversation, he looked visibly moved. "I never realized how blind I've been," he admitted. "But I want to change, and I hope you'll hold me accountable." Word of their unlikely partnership spread quickly, sparking both admiration and skepticism. Some praised Maya for her willingness to extend grace, while others accused her of being naive. But Maya brushed off the criticism, focusing instead on the progress they were making. Under her guidance, Judge Hawthorne implemented new protocols in his courtroom, including mandatory training sessions for staff on cultural sensitivity and fairness. Slowly but surely, his reputation began to shift, from a brash, dismissive judge to one committed to reform. Meanwhile, Maya faced another challenge closer to home. Marcus, her younger brother, struggled to adjust to life under the shadow of his sister's fame. "It feels like everyone only sees me as Maya's brother," he confessed one evening, frustration evident in his voice. "What about me? What about what I want to do?" Maya felt a pang of guilt. In her quest to help others, she hadn't fully considered how her actions might affect those closest to her. Sitting beside him on the couch, she wrapped an arm around his shoulders. "You're right," she said softly. "This journey has been overwhelming for all of us. But don't ever think your dreams are less important because of mine. Tell me, what do you want to achieve?" Marcus hesitated before answering. "I love art," he said finally. "I want to design video games someday. Something big and creative." Maya smiled, pride swelling in her chest. "Then let's make it happen," she said firmly. "We'll find classes, resources, whatever you need. Your future is just as important as anyone else's." Through these trials, Maya learned valuable lessons about balance, empathy, and the complexities of leadership. Fame had opened doors she never imagined, but it had also tested her resolve in ways she hadn't anticipated. Months passed, and Maya Johnson's journey continued to evolve in ways she could never have predicted. The courtroom that had once been a place of mockery and disbelief was now a space where her presence commanded respect, and not just from judges or lawyers, but from everyone who walked through its doors. Her reputation as a brilliant legal mind spread far beyond Chicago, earning her invitations to speak at conferences, universities, and even international forums on justice reform. Yet, despite the accolades and opportunities, Maya stayed true to her roots, always prioritizing the people she sought to serve. One crisp autumn morning, Maya stood before a packed courtroom once again. But this time, there was no doubt about who she was or what she represented. Dressed in a sleek navy blue suit, her hair neatly tied back, she exuded confidence without arrogance. Beside her sat a young woman named Alina, a single mother fighting to regain custody of her 2 children after an unjust accusation landed her in legal trouble. It was exactly the kind of case Maya lived for. Complex, challenging, and deeply personal for those involved. As the hearing began, Maya navigated the proceedings with the same precision and passion that had first stunned Judge Hawthorne months earlier. She dismantled the prosecution's arguments piece by piece, exposing inconsistencies and biases that had plagued the case from the start. When the judge finally ruled in Alina's favor, tears streamed down the young mother's face as she hugged Maya tightly. "Thank you," Alina whispered, her voice trembling. "You saved my family." For Maya, moments like these were worth more than any headline or award. They reminded her why she had chosen this path, to give a voice to those who felt powerless, to fight for fairness in a system that often favored privilege over truth. But it wasn't just her victories that defined her. It was also the lessons she learned along the way. Judge Hawthorne, too, had undergone a transformation. Once infamous for his sharp tongue and dismissive attitude, he now presided over cases with a newfound sense of humility and awareness. He frequently credited Maya for opening his eyes to the flaws within the judicial system. "She didn't just teach me about the law," he said during a public panel discussion. "She taught me about humanity, about seeing people, not stereotypes." Their partnership became a symbol of redemption, proving that growth and change were possible, even in the most unlikely places. Back home, Marcus flourished under his sister's encouragement. With her support, he enrolled in art classes and began working on designs for video games inspired by their shared experiences growing up. "I'm creating a world where anyone can be a hero," he told her one evening, showing off sketches of vibrant characters overcoming incredible odds. Maya grinned proudly, realizing that while she might have been the one making headlines, Marcus was crafting his own legacy in his own unique way. Maya's nonprofit organization, Justice for All Youth, expanded rapidly, reaching cities across the country. Volunteers poured in, eager to join her mission, and donors supported initiatives ranging from free legal clinics to scholarships for aspiring young lawyers. One evening, while reviewing plans for a new community center, Maya reflected on how far they'd come. What started as a small idea born out of frustration with injustice had grown into a movement touching thousands of lives. Yet, amidst all the success, Maya remained grounded. She knew the fight for equality was far from over. There would always be battles to wage, systems to challenge, and voices to amplify. But she also knew she wasn't alone. From her family to her team, from Judge Hawthorne to the countless individuals she'd helped along the way, she had built a network of allies committed to the same cause. As she walked out of the courthouse one evening, the golden hues of sunset casting long shadows on the pavement, Maya paused to take it all in. Reporters called out her name, cameras flashed, and supporters cheered, but she simply smiled and waved before stepping into the quiet embrace of twilight. For Maya, this wasn't the end of a story, it was the beginning of something bigger. Her journey proved that brilliance has no age limit, courage knows no bounds, and justice is worth every struggle. And as she disappeared into the crowd, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead, one thing was certain. Maya Johnson wasn't just a lawyer, a prodigy, or a media sensation. She was a force, a relentless advocate for fairness, hope, and the belief that anyone, no matter where they came from, could rewrite the rules and change the world.